Oh, hello, and welcome to my PyCon Italia 2023 talk. First, I'd like to thank all the conference organizers. Putting on these conferences is so much work, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be here and give this talk. And I'd like to also thank you for coming to this conference and for coming to my talk. Thank you. Oh, thanks. So I'm American. This is my second time in Europe and in Florence. I flew into Rome a few days ago, though, and I have to say, I like Florence a little bit better than Rome. The layout of the streets in Rome is very confusing, and all the roads lead to Rome, but all the roads in Rome seem to end right here. And I did some walking around the city, and I wasn't very impressed. This place might be nice once they finish building it. But you know, maybe Rome just isn't for me. There were other people seem to really like this pool, but I don't know, they were taking pictures of it, but it's just water. It looks nice, I guess, but I don't know. And also, it was really hard to find food in Rome. Half the time I would go someplace for pizza, and when I got there, there wouldn't be any pizza. Where's the pizza? Yeah, anyway, so Florence is great. I really love being here. In this talk, I will tell you how to create APIs for API-less desktop applications. My name is Al Sweigart. I'm mostly known as the author of Automate the Boring Stuff with Python and a few other books. You can read them all for free under a Creative Commons license on my website, inventwithpython.com. We are at PyCon sharing our love for Python and Python libraries. So of course, the programming language that I want to talk to you about is Python. And also AutoHotkey. AutoHotkey is software for Windows that lets you automate and control the mouse and keyboard through the AutoHotkey scripting language. It's great for making automation hacks, really. I'm an experienced software developer, so I know that you probably shouldn't create AutoHotkey scripts for your large production systems, but also I'm an experienced software developer, so I know that there are probably many companies that use AutoHotkey scripts for their large production systems. YouTuber Tom Scott, who you might recognize by his red shirt and British accent, has a video, The Art of the Bodge. And bodge is British slang for a makeshift hack that is ugly, but it works. And he created an emoji keyboard. This is over a dozen keyboards combined so that each key had its own emoji character that it would type. And he used AutoHotkey to help him create this single mega keyboard. And it's absolutely disgusting and absolutely lovely. AutoHotkey was great as this glue language that helped him put together this ridiculous and lovely invention. And Python is also a great glue language. If you have two large software systems and there's no obvious way to integrate them, Python is oftentimes my first choice. But AutoHotkey is great, but I feel like they made a mistake by creating their own scripting language to go with it. If you invent your own language, you also have to maintain it, you have to document it, you have to develop the community around it, and that's a lot of work that's not related to simulating mouse clicks and keyboard presses. It's reinventing a very large wheel. Now, PyAutoGUI is a Python module to control the mouse and keyboard, and I created PyAutoGUI so that Python could be the scripting language. I wanted something that would work on Windows, macOS, and Linux, and I wanted it to be simple. If you wanted to simulate a mouse click, you could just import the module and call the click function, and that's all. So writing scripts that control the mouse and keyboard are excellent for automating certain processes, or if you want to make automated tests for graphical user interfaces. The general term GUI automation is made for this, hence the title of this talk. And if you have an app that has a graphical user interface and you want to write a program that can interact with it, PyAutoGUI is great for this. There's another term that I discovered for this. It's RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation. And this is a terrible name because it has nothing to do with robots. There's no physical robots like in car factories with the arms. They're using the robotics really to mean more like bots, like automated systems, like chat bots, or basically scripts that just click on things and automate the keyboard for you, that sort of thing. So I started looking at the websites for a lot of RPA companies, and I really couldn't figure out what exactly they do. They would say, like, we create automation solutions. Okay, I don't know what that means exactly, but from what I could tell, it sounds like that they create software systems that automate the mouse and keyboard. Now, if you don't know how to program, a lot of these companies also have other software tools called no-code or low-code tools, and I tried a few of them out. The problem with these is that they're marketed towards non-coders as programming that is easier to learn than learning to program. But these tools are sort of easy to learn, but the thing is, you don't have to have a computer science degree to use them, but you also don't need to have a computer science degree to learn Python either. And so these tools are complicated enough, and Python is simple enough that they're about the same level of effort to learn as each other. Except with Python, you can then go on to, if you want, to learn more advanced Python concepts or use all of the Python libraries that are available. Whereas these tools tend to lock you into the company's ecosystem of their own proprietary software. It's like AutoHotkey, they invented their own scripting language. So I wrote a chapter about PyAutoGUI in Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, and judging from the web traffic on my website, it's actually the second most popular chapter in the entire book, right behind web scraping. I tried to make the functions in PyAutoGUI as easy to understand as possible, especially because I thought non-software engineers would be the primary target audience. So I avoided submodules and object-oriented classes, all of this stuff that doesn't add organization so much as it just adds bureaucracy. Hopefully just from the function and parameter names here, you can generally tell what they do, but the full documentation is online. So keep in mind that PyAutoGUI is specifically for automating desktop applications. These are apps that have a GUI. If you have a web app, then you would be better off if you were using browser automation tools like Selenium or Playwright. But let me tell you some of the things that PyAutoGUI has been used for. This is a bot that I wrote to automatically play an old Flash game called Sushi Go Round. So in this game, you have customers that come in, they order some sushi, and you have to click on the ingredients and make the sushi for them. And then after they leave, you click on the plates to clear away the plate and then make room for more customers. So I pre-programmed the locations of all the ingredient buttons and the menus for this. PyAutoGUI also has a feature where you can give it small images and it'll take a screenshot of the screen and locate where those images are, so that's how it can find out what the customers are ordering. And the bot doesn't play this game perfectly, but it plays it well enough to get through all 7 levels of the game. A YouTuber named Kian Bros used PyAutoGUI to write a bot that would play this pay-to-win game, except he wanted to win without paying, so he had a bot play it for, I think, about like 30 hours straight. He used the same principles as the Sushi Go Round bot. YouTuber Afrix used PyAutoGUI to make a self-navigating bot for Among Us. In fact, writing bots to play games automatically seems to be a very popular hobby given all the videos that I found on YouTube. Of course, this ability to write simple scripts that can control the mouse and keyboard are precisely why we have those I am not a robot CAPTCHA challenges. Otherwise, it'd be very trivial to write a script that can just automatically fill out these forms and sign up for millions of free accounts on a website. There's also other uses for PyAutoGUI. This one person on Reddit used it to automatically draw random lines in MS Paint. So basically we have an AI that can create Jackson Pollock paintings. Now, MS Paint itself doesn't have an API, or application programming interface. An API is a way for one program to interact and control another program. So humans don't use APIs, we just use the graphical user interface, we just use the mouse and keyboard to interact with a program. But if you make a program that can control MS Paint by controlling the mouse and keyboard, suddenly you have a way for your scripts to control MS Paint. So that program sort of becomes the API that you can then use to automate MS Paint. And I always have a note to drink water. There's something really amazing about watching these GUI automation scripts run. Programming is often very abstract, and the computer is going much faster than you can really comprehend. But with these scripts, if you call a function to move the mouse to the right by 100 pixels, you can actually see the mouse moving to the right by 100 pixels. It's definitely slower for a program to interact with desktop apps this way compared to using an official API. But if the desktop app doesn't have an API, then this is the only way that you can interact with it. So there's other benefits too. In this example, I wrote a program that drags the mouse in a rectangular spiral pattern. And when I run this on top of MS Paint, it will draw with far more precision and speed this shape much faster and more accurately than any human user could move. But you might not think, you might not see what the point of this is, because after all, we have image libraries like Pillow, and you could just generate the image file of this directly. But desktop applications like MS Paint might have some special features that you don't want to reprogram yourself, like the fancy brush styles right here. This would be much harder to generate on your own using a library like Pillow. And you can create your own Python module that sort of provides an API and translates all the function calls into mouse and keyboard activity. So in this way, Python glues your Python scripts to an API-less desktop app. Now, let's do a case study with this cross-platform desktop application called Posterazor. I really love this program. So it takes an image that you give it, and then it produces a multi-page PDF that you can then print and then tape all the pages together to create a giant poster from that image. Now, there's no way to automate Posterazor. It doesn't have an API. It doesn't even have command line arguments that you can pass to it. So if you have a folder of 1,000 images and you want to make posters out of all of them, you would have to do all the clicking yourself. So using Python and PyAutoGUI, let's create an API for this application. Now, this already exists. It's up there on GitHub. You can take a look at it. I have no idea if it works on anybody else's computer except for my laptop. But it basically looks like this. When you call the load image function, it will make the mouse and keyboard move around and click on the open file button in the graphical user interface and then type in the name of the file name that you pass it. It'll click on all the checkboxes to do all these settings and configurations. These functions essentially are the API, and so what we're creating is this Posterazor API.py module. And so this module is what calls PyAutoGUI functions to control the mouse and keyboard. But first, we have to actually take a look at this Posterazor app and plan things out. So the user interface isn't that bad. It's a 5-step process. Here on step 1, there's a button that brings up the open file dialog, and then you can type out the file name. There's always a next and back button on all of the steps, and they're always going to be in the same place. That'll be a very important fact to keep in mind. Here on the second step, we just tell it what orientation we want and the size of the paper that we're using. These are just checkboxes and text fields for the amount of border space that we want. And step 3 is how much overlap each page should have, so you don't have to tape the edges together. You can have some overlap there, and you can adjust how much overlap you have here. And then here on step 4, you can enter the total size of the poster. In this case, we'll make this 8 pages by 4 pages in size. These are just text fields with numbers in them. And then finally, step 5 has a button that you can click to give it the name of the PDF to produce. So you could recreate this entire application yourself using Pillow and PyPDF2 or some other library like that, but you would essentially be recreating this entire application yourself. It'd be a lot easier if you just write an automation script that can do all the clicking for you. So all of you, right now, no matter what your skill level, are capable of writing code for a Python module like this. It's fairly straightforward, but there are a few bumps and things that that are kind of tricky that you can figure out. Here's a bunch of a little series of tips and tricks that I learned while making an API for this program. First of all, I've had the problem where there's a bug in my program and it's caught in an infinite loop, and then the mouse cursor is just going back and forth constantly. And I can't actually close the program because I can't move the mouse over to the close button to actually stop the script, and so it's just constantly moving back and forth. So there's a fail-safe feature in PyAutoGUI. If you just move the mouse cursor to any of the corners of the screen, it'll take that to mean, oh, I should just immediately stop working right now. So this is sort of like in that Disney movie where Mickey Mouse enchants the broom to fill up the tub full of water, except then the broom just starts doing it over and over and over again, and he can't stop it. So this is just a fail-safe mechanism to shut down the program. One of the things that you're going to do when you're planning out your automation script is that you want to get the coordinates of all the buttons that you want to click on. So there's actually a tool in PyAutoGUI called mouse info that will give you the XY coordinates of the mouse cursor, and then you can click on these, you can press these hotkeys to then log all of the XY coordinates. This is a lot easier than writing this down. Now, the absolute mouse coordinates only work if the applications window is always in the same place on the screen, but that's not always possible. So really what you want to do is have PyAutoGUI find that window and then reset it to a standard size. In this case, I set it to 1 pixel by 1 pixel, but Posterazor has a minimum size that it will then shrink down to. So that way you can always predict where the buttons will be in this script. And then you can use the location of the top edge and left edge of the window itself to then add the coordinates for where the different buttons in the window will be. So it'll look something like this. What you can also do instead of shrinking down the window to some standard size is also just maximizing it. That'll also give it a sort of standard size that you can work with. Yeah, one thing that I do is instead of giving actual pixel coordinates, I'll just give a percentage across the window, so 50% is sort of in the middle of the window. And that way, if you change the screen resolution on your screen, that would change the absolute number of pixels there. The code will then work no matter what the screen resolution is set to. There's all these, as I said before, like PyAutoGUI's main disadvantage is that it's basically clicking on things without knowing what it's clicking on. So there's a lot of little tips that you can do to prevent it from going off the rails. In this case, the pixel function will tell you the color of the pixel as a red, green, blue tuple value. And so that way, if you're expecting to click on a red button, you can check to see, is this pixel actually red before you click on it? Now, in general, controlling the mouse is very unreliable. Instead, you could just navigate with the keyboard. You can simulate pressing the tab key, just call the press function and pass it tab. And that way you can switch the focus between different text fields that way. It's always going to be in the same order. And also there's a hotkey function where you can simulate pressing Alt-Tab to switch back and forth between windows. There's lots of little tricks. Always sort of think of how you would, what you would type in order to navigate through these windows, because that's going to be a lot more reliable than trying to guess where the XY coordinates that you should click. And finally, it's great to figure out what are like some ways that you could reset the program to some known state. For example, Posterazor has 5 steps, but it'll always have a back and next button in the corner there. And on the first step, the back button will just be disabled. So no matter what step you're on, you could always just program it to click on back 5 times, and I'll restore it back to the first step. And then from there, you can just click the next button a certain number of times to go to a certain step. This will just be different for whatever application that you're trying to automate, but be on the lookout for little things like that to make it a little bit more reliable. And then if all else fails, there is the screenshot feature where you can then have it find exactly the image of a button that you're searching for. The one problem with this is that it has to be a pixel perfect match. So if you have like a window is being covered up by something, then it won't match. However, if you do have OpenCV also installed, you can do a little fuzzy matching, and so that way if there's a slight variation there, it'll still be able to find it. You can also give it like a subregion of the screen, and that way it'll be able to search only a particular part. I do that with the Sushi Go Round bot as well. And finally, there's no way to actually read any text from the applications directly, but what you can do is simulate pressing Control-A or Command-A to select all the text, and then Control-C to copy that text to the clipboard. And PyAutoGUI has paste and copy functions to read text off of the keyboard and put text onto the keyboard. All of this is on in the online documentation. And then finally, just for, you often won't need input or output, but there are these little message box functions as well. They have the same names as in JavaScript, alert and prompt, if you need to have some sort of input right there. Now, there's plenty of other best practices that are out there, and it'll be different for it'll be different depending on the application that you want to automate. But this is a way that you can really open up a new level of automation to desktop applications where you don't have the source code for them, you have no way of changing or automating them, but you still want to have some level of automation for this. So, you know, a lot of the scripts that you write that use these features are going to be messy. They're going to be a bodge, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's this old Jeff Atwood blog post where he says, please don't learn to code. And he saw all the mainstream interest that there was in programming, and he thought, oh no, all of these amateur programmers are going to start writing bad code. But that's actually not a bad thing. That's a great thing, because the choice isn't really between messy software and professional software. The choice is between messy software and no software at all. You know, if someone on your sales team writes a small script and then the entire sales department starts relying on it, that's actually a good thing, even if it's a messy hack of a job, because it's actually useful. It's being used by people. And maybe the company can later hire some professional software developers to expand on it or rewrite it if they want. Automating a desktop application with something like AutoHotkey or PyAutoGUI is likely not going to be this mathematically elegant masterpiece. But like the Python programming language, it is going to be useful, and it will be approachable whether you're an expert or an amateur. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Al. So we have a question here for you. Did you think about automating interactions, I think, on smartphone?
This is on the roadmap of features. Unfortunately, I'm the main maintainer of this, and it's a lot of work to get all of these features done on Windows and Mac and Linux. So far, I don't have any idea how I'm going to get this onto Android or iOS, but I definitely would like to do this at some point.
All right. Well, those were all the questions that we have. So thank you all for listening to Al. And if you like, you can stay for the next talk that we have here in Italia. Thank you very much, everyone.